Hello everyone. In this session, let us understand the supply chain performance measures, and there are several performance measuring drivers. We'll discuss all those things in detail. Before proceeding to the drivers, let us understand the difference between responsiveness and efficiency. Uh, Efficiency actually describes the best of business practices across the world. And efficient production means making products without wasting materials or natural resources or even man hours. Efficient facility management is one of the requirement for all the industries because efficiency saves money and increases profit through the business. But an efficient supply chain can be beneficial to you know all the components of the business system. Efficient supply chain gets your product to their destination in the most cost effective way, especially in today's global marketplace. This is very much essential. Your supply chain costs are major part of your overhead, which are expressed in the prices you ultimately offer to your customers. If your supply chain adds unnecessary expenses to your end products, then your ability to successfully complete or compete with other companies offering the same products is effectively hobbled. So it's as simple as that. If your competitors have more efficient supply chains than you, they will be able to offer the same products for less. So therefore, efficiency of the supply chain depends upon factors like optimization, high quality and inventory management, and customer satisfaction. Uh, when it comes to responsiveness supply chain actually uh, how the company responds to the customer needs, and it has to do two things. One is it has to be responsive to your needs, and it has to be responsive to the needs of your customers. So this responsiveness is definitely depends upon accuracy, order fulfillment accuracy, how quickly and how effectively you fulfill the customer order. Then scalable fulfillment, in case if any of the production volume has to be increased within what less time, how come you can do that scalable fulfillments. Then communication, how quickly you communicate with the customer and get the feedback or grievances, everything, and how quickly you respond to them. Then customer satisfaction. So these are the few factors which affects the responsiveness of the system. So supply chain performance in terms of responsiveness and efficiency is based on interaction between logistical and cross-functional drivers. Uh, so there are several performance measure drivers, out of which the facility is one important driver. Uh, Let us discuss about the role of facilities play in the supply chain, as well as critical facility related decisions that supply chain managers need to make. Uh, if you talk about role in supply chain, if you think inventory as what is being passed along the supply chain and transportation as how it is passed along, then facilities are the where of the supply chain. They are the locations to or from which the inventory is transported. Within facility, inventory is either transformed into another stage, that is manufacturing state, or it is stored, something like warehousing. Uh, then the facilities, the role of facilities in if you look at the competitive strategy, then facilities are the key driver of supply chain performance in terms of responsiveness and efficiency, that what we have discussed just now. For example, companies can gain economies of scale when a product is manufactured or stored in only one location. This centralization increases efficiency. The cost reduction, however, comes at the expenses of responsiveness, as many of companies' customers may be located far from the production facility. The opposite side is also true. Locating facilities close to customers increases the number of facilities needed, and consequently reduces the efficiency. If the customer demands and is willing to pay for the responsiveness that having numerous facilities adds. However, this facilities decision helps meeting the company's competitive strategic goals. For example, if you take Toyota and Honda, both Toyota and Honda use facilities decisions to be more responsive to their customers. These companies have an end goal of opening manufacturing facilities in every major market that they enter. While there are other benefits to opening local facilities, such as protection from currency fluctuation and trade barriers. The increase in responsiveness play a large role in Toyota and Honda's decision to place facilities in their local market. Now, if you look at the components of facility decisions, uh, the decisions regarding facilities are a very crucial part of supply chain design. As we know, identifying the components of facility decision that companies must analyze. First role for production facilities, firms must decide whether they will be flexible, dedicated, or a combination of both. Flexible capacity can be used for many types of products, but is often less efficient. Whereas dedicated capacity can be used for only a limited number of products, but is more efficient. Firms must also decide whether to design a facility with a product focus or functional focus. A product focused facility performs many different functions. For example, fabrication and assembly in producing a single type of product. A functional focused facility performs few functions, only fabrication and or assembly on many types of products. Okay, a product focus tends to result in more expertise about a particular type of product at expense of functional expertise that comes from functional methodology. Next, we have to look at the location also. Deciding where a company will locate its facility is a larger part of the design of supply chain. A basic trade-off here is whether to centralize in order to gain economies of scale or to decentralize to become more responsive by being close to the customer. So companies must also consider a host of issues related to various characteristics of the local area in which a facility is located. This may include macroeconomic factors or quality of workers or cost of workers or cost of facility, availability of infrastructure, proximity to customers, uh, the location of the company's facilities, even tax effects, and other strategic factors. So, while talking about capacity, companies must also determine, facilities' capacity to perform its intended functions or function. A large amount of excess capacity allows the facilities to be very flexible and to respond to wide swings in the demands placed on it. Excess capacity, however, uh, costs money and therefore can decrease efficiency. A facility with little excess capacity will likely to be more efficient per unit products it produces than one with a lot of unused capacity. The high utilization facility, however, will have a difficulty responding to demand fluctuations. Therefore, a company must make a trade-off to determine the right amount of capacity to have at each of its facilities. Uh, a company manager should track the facility related, metrics that influence the supply chain performance, such as capacity, which measures the maximum amount of facility can process, utilization, which measures the fraction of capacity that is currently being used in the facility, and theoretical flow or cycle time of production, which measures the time required to process a unit if there are absolutely no delay at any stage. Uh, Actual average flow or cycle time, which measures average actual time taken for all units processed over specified duration, such as a week or month. Then flow time efficiency, which is actually the ratio of theoretical flow time to actual average flow time. This is one of the uh, metrics that influence supply chain performance. Then product variety, which measures the number of products and product families processed in a facility. Processing cost and flow times are likely to increase with product variety. Then volume contribution of that is also measures volume contribution, which measures the fraction of total volume processed by facility that comes from top 20 percent of customers. And processing idle time, which measures the fraction of time that the facility was processing units, which being set up to process units unavailable because it was down, and idle because it had no units to process. Average production batch size, which measures the average amount produced in each production batch. Similarly, a production service level, which measures the fraction of production orders completed in full and on time. So this is about facilities, which is one of the important performance measure driver in supply chain management. Okay, next we'll discuss about the second supply chain performance driver, uh, that is inventory, and this role of inventory in supply chain performance. Uh, Inventory uh, exists in supply chain because of mismatch between supply and demand. This mismatch is actually intentional one, where it is economical to the manufacturer in large lots that are then stored for the future sales. This mismatch is also intentional at a retail store, uh, where inventory is held in anticipation of future demand. So, an important role that inventory plays in the supply chain is to increase the amount of demand that can be satisfied by having the product ready and available when customer wants it. Another role, and that is significant role that inventory plays, is to reduce the cost by exploiting the economies of scale that may exist during the production and distribution. Inventory is held throughout the supply chain in the form of raw materials, work in process, and finished goods. Inventory is a major source of cost in a supply chain and has a huge impact on responsiveness of the company. If we think of responsiveness spectrum, the location and quantity of inventory can move the supply chain from one end of the spectrum to the other. For example, an apparel supply chain with a high inventory, levels at the retail stage has high level of responsiveness because a consumer can walk into a store and walk out with a shirt he or she was looking for. In contrast, an apparel supply chain with little inventory could be very efficient, but would make customers to wait several weeks or even months for their clothes. Uh, this inventory also has a significant impact on material flow time in supply chain. Material flow time is the time that elapses between the point at which material enters the supply chain to the point at which it exits. For a supply chain, throughput, which is the rate at which the sales occur, uh, if inventory is represented by, say, if I take I, that is, say, inventory is I, flow time is T, okay, flow time is T, then say throughput, and throughput is say D, throughput by D. So then this can be these three things can be related using equation I is equal to D and P. Okay. So where I represents inventory and T represents the flow time and D represents the throughput. It's nothing but rate at which the sales occur. So this is one equation that you can uh, use while calculating the inventories. If I look at one example, if the flow time of an auto assembly process is say 10 hours and say throughput is 60 units an hour, uh, so this law tells us that this equation tells us that inventory is 16 to 10, that is 600 units. If we are able to reduce inventory to say 300 units while holding throughput constant, we would reduce our flow time to 5 hours, that is 300 by 60. So here we have to note that inventory and throughput must have consistent units. Okay. So logical conclusion here is that inventory and flow time are synonymous in supply chain because throughput is often determined by customer demand. Company managers should use actions that lower the amount of inventory needed without increasing cost or reducing responsiveness, because reduced flow time can be a significant advantage in a supply chain. So if you look at the role of this inventory in competitive strategy, so it plays a important role in supply chain's ability to support a firm's strategy, competitive strategy. If a firm's competitive strategy requires a very high level of responsiveness, a company can achieve this responsiveness by locating large amount of inventory close to the customers. Conversely, a company can also use inventory to become more efficient by reducing inventory through centralized stocking. The latter strategy would support a competitive strategy of being a low cost producer. The trade-off implicit in the inventory driver is between the responsiveness that results from more inventory and efficiency that results from less. If I have to tell some example for this, no, this Nordstrom's competitive strategy target upper end customers with high responsiveness requirements. Uh, this is with respect to strategy, competitive strategy. One of the competitive strategy that is called as Nordstrom competitive strategy. Actually, these customers are willing to pay premium to have the products they want when they want them. To support this competitive strategy, Nordstrom uses inventory. The company stock a large variety and quantity of products to ensure a high level of availability. In fact, Nordstrom stocks significantly larger amount of inventory than other department stores. Nordstrom incurs higher cost because of its large inventory, but it gains extra margin from its customer who are willing to pay for a service that Nordstrom's inventory makes possible. So now let us understand the different components of inventory decisions. So actually, as a company manager, it is very essential to identify the major inventory related decisions that supply chain management requires in order to effectively create more responsive and more efficient supply chains. So the first component here is cycle inventory. Cycle inventory is the average amount of inventory used to satisfy demand between receipts of supplier shipments. The size of cycle inventory is a result of production, transportation, or purchase of material in large lots. Companies produce or purchasing in large lots to exploit economies of scale in the production, transportation, or purchasing process. With the increase in lot size, however, it also comes an increase in carrying costs. As an example of cycle stock decision, let us consider a book retailer. Retailers sales average around 10 truckloads of books a month. Okay, the cycle inventory decisions the retailer must make are how much to order for replenishment and how often to place these orders. Okay, the e-retailer could order 10 truckloads once each month, or it could order one truckload every 3 days. The basic trade-off supply chain managers face is the cost of holding larger lots of inventory. That is when cycle inventory is high. This versus cost of ordering product frequently when cycle inventory is low. So coming to the next component, we have safety inventory. Safety inventory actually is a inventory held in case demand exceeds expectations. It is held to counter uncertainty. If the world were perfectly predictable, only cycle inventory would be needed because demand is uncertain and may exceed expectations. But companies hold safety inventory to satisfy an unexpectedly high demand. This company managers face a key decision when determining how much safety inventory to hold. For example, a toy retailer, such as Toys R, they must calculate its a safety inventory for the holiday buying season. If it is, if if it has to much safe uh, safety inventory, toys go unsold and may have to be discounted after the holidays. If the company has too little safety inventory, however, this toys lose sales along with the margin those sales would have brought. Therefore, choosing safety inventory involves making a trade-off between the cost of having too much inventory and cost of losing sales due to not having enough inventory. Then we can take the seasonal inventory as a third component. Seasonal inventory is built up to counter predictable variability in demand. Companies using seasonal inventories build up inventory in periods of low demand and store it for periods of high demand when they will not have the capacity to produce all that is demanded. So company managers face again a key decision in determining whether to build a seasonal inventory, and if they do build it, in deciding how much to build. If a company can rapidly change the rate of its production system at a very low cost, then it may not need seasonal inventory because the production system can adjust to a period of high demand without incurring large costs. But if changing the rate of production is expensive, uh, when worker must be hired or fired, then company would be would be wise to establish smooth production and build up its inventory during periods of low demand. Therefore, the basic trade of supply chain managers face in determining how much seasonal inventory you build is cost of carrying additional seasonal inventory versus cost of having a more flexible production rate. So we can think of next component of inventory decisions maybe a level of product availability. This level of product availability is the fraction of demand that is served on time from product held in the inventory. A high level of product availability provides a high level of responsiveness, but the increases the cost because a lot of inventory is held but rarely used. In contrast to this, a low level of product availability lowers inventory holding cost, but results in a higher fraction of customers who are not served on time. So here the basic trade-off when determining the level of product availability is between cost of inventory to increase product availability and the loss from not serving customers on time. So we already discussed about facility related metrics in the previous discussions. So if you take the same inventory related metrics, then a manager should track certain inventory related metrics that influence supply chain performance. Maybe average inventory, which measures the average amount of inventory carried. Okay. Uh, Actually, average inventory should be measured in units day of demand and financial value. Then products with more than a specified number of days of inventory. which identifies the products for which the firm is carrying a high level of inventory. This matrix can be used to identify products that are in oversupply or identify reasons that justify high inventory, such as price discounts or being very slow mover. Then we can, then next matrix may be average replenishment batch size, which measures the average amount in each replenishment order. The batch size should be measured by, in terms of both the units and the days of demand. It can be estimated by average, that is averaging over time the difference between maximum and minimum inventories. So next, in inventory related matrix will be average safety inventory, which measures average amount of inventory on hand when replenishment order arrives. Average safety inventory should be measured in both, units and days of demand. It can be estimated by averaging over time the minimum inventory on hand in each replenishment cycle. Then one more is that fill rate. Fill rate measures the fraction of orders, that means demand, that were met on time from the inventory. So these are the few, inventory related matters which is definitely going to influence the supply chain performance. So let us take the next performance, supply chain performance measuring driver, uh, that is transportation. So the role of transportation in supply chain is very important. So let us discuss about key transportation related decisions that supply chain managers can make. So first, let us understand the role of this transportation in the supply chain. Actually, transportation moves product between different stages in supply chain, like the other supply chain drivers. Transportation has a large impact on both the responsiveness and efficiency. Faster transportation allows a supply chain to be more responsive but reduces its efficiency. The type of transportation a company uses also affects the inventory and facility location in the supply chain. Dell, for example, files some components from Asia because doing so it allows the companies to lower level of inventory it holds. Clearly, such a practice also increases responsiveness but decreases transportation efficiency. Transport, it actually decreases transportation efficiency itself because it's more costly than importing parts by ship. uh, then if you look at the role of this transportation in the competitive strategy, actually it is it is prominently in the company's consideration uh, for the targets that customer needs. If the company's competitive strategy targets a customer who demands a very high level of responsiveness, and that customer is willing to pay for his responsiveness, then company can use transportation as one of the driver for making supply chain more responsive. The oppose in case opposite thing is also true. If company's competitive strategy targets customer whose main decision criteria is price, then company can use transportation to lower the cost of product at the expense of responsiveness, because company may use both inventory and transportation to increase responsiveness or efficiency. The optimal decision for the company often means finding the right balance between these two. Okay. Um, so let us now discuss about the components of transportation decisions. So we have to identify the key components of transportation that companies, companies must analyze when designing and operating a supply chain. So in that we can think of, or we can talk about design of transportation network. So transportation network is nothing but a collection of transportation modes, locations, and routes along which the product can be shipped. A company must decide whether the transportation from supply source will be direct to demand point or will go through intermediate consolidation points. These design decisions also include whether multiple supply or demand points will be included in the single run or not. Finally, companies must also decide on the set of transportation modes that will be used. So, next component could be a choice of transportation mode. Because the mode of transportation is the manner in which the product is moved from one location in the supply chain network to another. Companies can choose between air or truck or rail or sea and pipeline as mode of transport for products. Today, information goods can also be sent through internet. Okay, each mode has different characteristics with respect to the speed, size, and and uh, individual parcels. So cost of shipping and flexibility that lead companies to choose one particular, that is depend upon the company to decide which particular mode they are preferring for. Then if you look at the transportation related matrix, the way how we have discussed inventory and facility related matrix. So there are few transportation related matrix. Maybe average inbound transportation cost, which measures the cost of bringing the product into a facility as a percentage of sales or cost of goods sold. This cost should be measured per unit brought in. But this can be a difficult one. The inbound transportation cost is generally uh, uh, it is included in that is cost of goods sold. It is always useful to separate this cost by the supplier. Then average incoming shipment size, which measures the average number of units or dollars in each incoming shipment at a facility. Then average outbound transportation cost, which measures the cost of sending product out of facility to the customer. Again, this cost should be measured per unit shipped, but it is often measured as a percentage of sales. It is useful to separate this matrix by the customer. Then coming to I think the last one, that is the fraction of transported by mode, which measures the fraction of transportation using each mode of transportation. This metric can be used to estimate if certain modes are overused or underutilized. So next, let us go to the next mode of that is a supply chain performance measuring driver, that is information. So let us discuss the role that information plays in supply chain. as well as key information related decisions that supply chain managers can do. uh, so if you look at the role of this supply information in supply chain, information it affects every part of the supply chain. Its impact is easy to underestimate, as information affects a supply chain in many different ways. Information serves as the connection between various stages of supply chain, which allows them to coordinate and maximize the total supply chain profitability. Information is also crucial to the daily operations of each stage in supply chain. For instance, a production scheduling system uses information on demand to create a schedule that allows a factory to produce the right products in an efficient manner. Warehouse management system, if you take warehouse management system, uses information to create visibility of the warehouse inventory. The company can then use this information to determine whether new orders can be filled or not. So if you look at the role of this information in the competitive strategy, of course, information is a very important driver that companies have to, you know, they have used to become both more efficient and more responsive. The tremendous growth of information technology is, it is one of the testimony to you know, impact that information can have on improving a company's prospects. Like all other drivers, even with information, companies reach a point when they must make the trade-off between efficiency and responsiveness. So another decision, key decision involves what information is most valuable in reducing cost and improving responsiveness within given supply chain. This decision will vary, depending on the supply chain structure and market segment that are served. Some companies, they target customers who require customized, products that carry premium price tags. These companies might find that investment in information allow them to respond more quickly to their customers. Uh, for example, this one of the manufacturing, that is Anderson Windows, is a major manufacturer of residential wood windows, which is located in so it is in Minnesota, that is Bayport. They have investigated in information system that enables the company to bring customized products to the market rapidly. The system called window of knowledge, which allows the distributors and customers to design windows to uh, custom fit their needs. Users can select from library over 50,000 components that can be combined in any number of ways. Uh, this particular system immediately gives the customer price quotes and automatically sends the order to the factory. If the customer decides to buy, this information investment not only gives the customer a much wider variety of products, it allows Anderson to be much more responsive to the customer, as it gets the customer's order to the factory as soon as the order is placed. If you take the Dell as an example for this, then Dell takes the order directly from the customer over the phone and through the internet. So like building this direct channel required an investment because of added functions which Dell must perform. A large part of the cost can be attributed to information with the direct channel model. However, Dell is able to view the actual consumer demand much sooner than most PC manufacturers. Therefore, a company can respond more quickly to the changes in customer needs. Even Dell can modify its product offerings to meet these new needs. Uh, Dell is not the low cost provider, but the company is however cheapest for its level of responsiveness, and a large part of its responsiveness is due to information flow between Dell and its customers. So these are the few examples which we can relate with the information as the driver. Then let us understand the different components of information decisions. So one of the components may be push versus pull. Okay? When designing the process of supply chain, managers must determine whether these processes are part of push or pull phase in the chain, which we have already discussed. Okay? About push and pull phase in our previous discussions. Uh, Actually, a push system generally requires information in the form of elaborate material requirement planning, uh, which take a master production schedule and roll it back. Uh, Creating schedules for suppliers with part types, quantities, and delivery dates. So all these, they have to do the scheduling for this. Full system requires information on actual demand to be transmitted extremely quickly throughout the entire chain, so that the production and distribution of products may reflect the real demand very accurately. So if you look at if you want to know one more component, that is forecasting, and uh, even coordination and information sharing is also one of the components, okay, of the information decisions. This coordination, supply chain coordination actually occurs when all stages of supply chain work towards the objective of maximizing the total supply chain profitability based on shared information. Lack of coordination can result in significant loss of supply chain profit. Coordination among different stages in supply chain requires each stage to share appropriate information with other stages. For example, if the supplier is to produce the right parts in a timely manner for a manufacturer in a full system, the manufacturer must share the demand and production information with the supplier. uh, this information sharing is thus very crucial to the success of the supply chain. Okay? So then comes forecasting. Forecasting is art and science of making projections about what future demand and conditions will be. Obtaining forecasting information frequently means using sophisticated techniques to estimate future sales or market conditions. So managers, company managers must decide how they will make the forecasts, and to what extent they will rely on forecasts to make proper decisions. Even companies, often they use forecasts both on tactical levels to schedule production, and on strategic level to determine whether to build new plants, or even whether to enter into a new market or something like that. Once a company creates a forecast, a company needs to plan to act on this forecast. Okay. actually there is one term which I have to use here, aggregate planning, which transforms forecasts into plan of activity to satisfy the projected demand. Okay. A key decision manager face is how to collaborate on aggregate planning throughout the entire supply chain. Okay, and this aggregate plan becomes critical information which is to be shared across supply chain, because it affects both the demand on a firm suppliers and supply to its customers. So there are many technologies which enable the sharing of informations, and for that we can take the example of electronic data interchange, which allows companies to place instantaneous and paperless purchase orders with suppliers. Electronic data interchange (EDI) is not only efficient, it also decreases the time needed to get products to customers, because transactions are faster and more accurate than when they are paper based. Though this EDI is a bit outdated and has limited capabilities, it still offer efficiency and responsiveness for some companies. And then internet has a critical advantage over EDI, that is electronic data interchange, with respect to information sharing, because the internet conveys much more information and therefore offers much more visibility than your EDI. So better visibility improves the decision across the supply chain. So internet communication among the stages in the supply chain is also easier, because a standard infrastructure, that is what is called World Wide Web, WWW, which is already exists. So really we have to thank to internet and e-commerce, which has become the major force in the supply chain. Then we can think of one more technology, that is ERP, that is Enterprise Resource Planning. It's a ERP system which provides transactional and global visibility of information from within a company and across its supply chain. This kind of real-time information helps supply chain to improve the quality of the you know quality of its operational decisions. Actually, ERP system keeps the track of information, whereas internet provides the only method with which we can view the information. Then supply chain management software uh, uses the information in ERP system to provide analytical decision support in addition to visibility of information. ERP systems show a company what is going on, while supply chain management system help a company decide what it should do. Uh, so even we have one more technology, that is radio frequency identification, that is RFID, which consists of an active or passive radio frequency applied to the item which is being tracked, and there are something called as a reader and emitter, something like that. A passive tag draws energy from the reader, whereas an active tag has its own battery and draws power from there. So actually, this Walmart company has used this particular technology for its top 100 suppliers. Okay. And actually, this RFID, radio frequency identification, has many potential uses. Can be used in manufacturing to check availability of the entire bills of material, and this technology can make the receiving of truck much faster and cheaper. full implementation of actually this RFID would eliminate the need for manual counting, and even you can see the barcode scanning at receiving dock. It can also be used to get an exact count of incoming items and items in storage. So RFID technology is, however, has is, of course, it is reaching 100, reaching people with 100% accuracy, and its cost per unit is still very, not that high to make the global acceptance difficult even at okay, at this particular level. Then if you look at the information related matrix which influence the supply chain performance, here we have something called as forecast horizon, uh, which is nothing but which actually identifies how far in advance of actual event a forecast is made. Okay. Then we have something called as forecast error, which measures the difference between forecast and actual demand. Then seasonal factors, which measures the extent to which the average demand in a season is above or below the average in the year. Then we can have a ratio of demand variability to order variability, which measures the standard deviation of incoming demand and supply order placed. So these are the few information related matrix. Okay. So next we will take the next driver, that is sourcing. Uh, Sourcing, let us understand the role of sourcing or outsourcing in the supply chain. Actually, sourcing is a set of business process required to purchase goods and services. So through sourcing, you can purchase goods and services from outside suppliers. Okay. So managers must decide which tasks need to be outsourced, and those that will be performed within the company. So that is what I call in-house activity. For each outsourced task, the manager must decide whether to source from the single supplier or portfolio of suppliers. If a portfolio of multiple suppliers is to be carried, then the role of each supplier in the in the portfolio must be clarified. So this, and the next step is to identify the set of criteria that will be used to select the supplier and measure their performance. The company managers can then select the suppliers and negotiate contracts with them. Actually, contracts define the role of each supply source and should be structured to improve supply chain performance. And actually, it has to minimize the information distortion uh, from one stage to the next stage. Once suppliers and contracts are in place, procurement process or processes that facilitate the placement and delivery of the orders becomes the next role or next major role. So the sourcing role in the, if you look at this role of sourcing in the competitive strategy, sourcing decisions are very crucial because they affect the level of efficiency and responsiveness the supply chain can achieve. In some instance, the company outsource to responsive third party, or if it is too expensive for them to develop their responsiveness on their own. For example is outsourcing of next day delivery by all firms to a few package carrier, because it is too expensive for a firm to develop the next day delivery capability on its own. Next day delivery. In other instances, companies have kept the process, in-house to maintain control. Otherwise, they lose control. Everything cannot be, outsourced. So certain activities they have to keep it in-house. Uh, so, um, for example, Cisco. So Cisco has, outsourced almost all of its manufacturing. It does, however, a sourcing strategy that varies by product type. For low-end products such as routers for home networks, Cisco aims for efficiency. These routers are produced and packed in China and shipped in very bulk for sale in United States. Cisco aims for lowest cost manufacturing location and economies of scale in transportation. That's why they have targeted, China market, okay, uh, for a low cost. For high-end products, in contrast, Cisco outsource to contract manufacturer in United States. These manufacturers are not cheap, but they are responsive and can serve the rapidly evolving needs of the high-end market. So this is what the strategy Cisco has developed over years. Then, if you look at the components of these sourcing decisions, so first one I have to tell you about in-house or outsource. The most significant uh, sourcing decision for the firm is whether to perform a task in-house or outsource it to a third party. This decision should be driven in part by its impact on the total supply chain profit. It is the best to outsource if the growth in the total supply chain profit is significant with little additional risk. Within a task such as transportation, managers must decide whether to outsource all of it, outsource only the responsive component, or outsource only the efficient component. Once again, the decision should be based on growth in total supply chain profitability. Then it also has something called second next component that we can list under this sourcing is suppliers selection. So company managers must decide on the number of suppliers they will have for a particular activity. They must then identify the criteria along which suppliers will be evaluated and how they will be selected. For the selection process, of course, managers must decide whether they will use direct negotiations or resort to an auction. If an auction is used, it must be structured, to ensure the desired outcome. Then the third component that we can list under list for sourcing decisions is procurement. Procurement, actually, it is a process in which suppliers sends product in response to the customer orders. Managers must decide on structure of procurement of the direct as well as the indirect materials, and strategic as well as general materials. But in each case, it is important to identify the critical mechanism for increasing supply chain profits. For example, if a firm should set up procurement for direct materials to ensure good coordination between supplier and buyer. In contrast, the procurement of products should be structured to ensure that the transaction costs are very low. So this is one of the important aspect of sourcing. Then coming to sourcing related metrics, okay, we already discussed about different metrics. maybe facility related, inventory related, or information related, and now it is sourcing related matrix. So as is the duty of the manager to track the sourcing related matrix which influence the supply chain performance. Maybe it is a days payable outstanding, which measures the number of days between when a supplier performed a supply chain task and when it was paid. Similarly, average purchase price, which is the average price at which the goods or service was purchased during the year. Then range of purchase price, which measures the fluctuation in purchase price during the specified period. So here the goal is to identify if the quantity of purchased correlated with the price or not. And then average purchase quantity, which measures the average amount of purchased per order. Like that, we have fraction on time deliveries, which measures the fraction of deliveries from the supplier that were on time. Then supply chain, supply, not supply, supply quality, which measures the quality of product supplied. Then supplied lead time, which measures the average time between when the order is placed and product arrives. So these are the few sourcing related metrics which definitely influence the supply chain performance. So these are the different types of drivers that we have discussed, and next we can think of the next in some textbooks even pricing is also one of the they have mentioned as pricing as one of the drivers of supply chain measuring performance measure. So let us discuss about this pricing and role of this pricing in supply chain. Actually, pricing is the process by which a company decides how much to charge customers for its goods and services. Pricing affects the customer segments that choose to buy the product as well as the customer's expectations. This directly affects the supply chain in terms of level of responsiveness required as well as demand profiles that the supply chain attempts to serve. Pricing is also a lever that can be used to match supply and demand. Short-term discounts can be used to eliminate supply, surpluses or decrease seasonal demands by moving some of the demand forward techniques. In short, pricing is one of the most significant factors that affect uh, the level and type of demand that supply chain will face. So if you look at the role in the role of this pricing in the competitive strategy, pricing is a significant attribute through which a company executes its competitive strategy. For example, company called Costco. It is a membership based wholesaler in United States, has a policy that the prices are kept steady but low. Customers expect low prices but are comfortable with a lower level of product availability. The steady prices also ensure that demand stays relatively stable. This Costco serves a well-defined market segment, and it can thus design a appropriate supply chain. The Costco supply chain aims to be very efficient at the expense of some responsiveness. In contrast, some manufacturing and transportation companies use pricing that varies with response time desired by the customer. Though they are pricing using this pricing, these companies actually target you know
broader set of customers, some of whom need responsiveness while other needs efficiency. So in that case, it becomes important for these companies to structure a supply chain that can meet the two divergent needs. Yeah, so at this moment, I have to give you the example of Amazon. Actually, Amazon offers its customer a large menu of prices for products that are purchased from the company. For example, suppose say a person purchasing two books worth of say $30 could use standard shipping, that is shipping within 3 to 5 business days at a cost of $4. Okay. So at the same time, for shipping in 2 business days at the cost of 11, that means if you want uh, early shipments, then the cost will be high. Okay. So for one day shipping, again, cost will be $20. So like that, the person purchasing two books worth of $30 may require to pay additional charges based on the standard shipping, that is shipping days. Uh, So this pricing menu actually in Amazon that allows actually makes Amazon to attract the customers with varying level of desired responsiveness. Uh, Customers paying for one day shipping impose a very high degree of uncertainty on Amazon. As customer opting for free shipping can be used to level out the workload at the warehouse over time. Uh, Amazon can thus use its pricing to provide responsiveness to those who value it, while using those who want to lower the price to help it improve its efficiency. Okay. So if you look at the component of pricing decisions, the first component can be pricing and economies of scale. Okay, most supply chain activities display economies of scale. And changeovers make small production, runs more expensive per unit, than large production runs. Loading and unloading cost make it cheaper to deliver it a truckload to one location than 4 locations. In each case, the provider of the supply chain activity must decide how to price it appropriately to reflect these economies of scale. Uh, the commonly used approach is to offer quantity discounts. Actually, a care must be taken to ensure that the quantity discounts offered are consistent with the economies of scale in the underlying process. Otherwise, there is a danger of customer orders being driven primarily by the quantity discounts, even though the underlying process does not have significant economies of scale. Then coming to um, fixed price versus menu pricing. Actually, a company must decide whether it will charge a fixed price for the supply chain activity or have a menu with prices that vary with some other attributes such as response time or location of delivery, like that. If marginal supply chain cost or the value to the customer vary significantly along some attribute, it is often effective to have a pricing menu. Okay, so we already discussed about Amazon on example of Amazon. Uh, offering a menu that is somewhat consistent with the cost of providing the particular supply chain service. Uh, uh, so pricing, next let us understand pricing related metrics which influence the supply chain performance. So number one, it is the profit margin, which measures profit as percentage of revenue. A firm needs to examine a wide variety of profit margin metrics to optimize its pricing, which including dimensions such as type of margin, gross, net, etc., and no, and customer types and different other types of products. And then next component or next matrix may be you know that is days sales outstanding, which measures the average time between when the sale is made and when the cash is collected. Similarly, you can think of incremental fixed cost per order, which measures incremental cost that are independent of the size of the order. These include changeover costs at a manufacturing plant or order processing or transportation costs that are incurred independent of shipment size at a mail order firm. Then average order size, which measures the average quantity per order. The average sales price, order size, incremental fixed cost per order, and incremental variable cost per unit. This help to estimate the contribution from performing supply chain activity. So then, uh, so range of sale price, which measures the maximum and minimum of sale price per unit over a specified time. So these are the few matrix which affects the performance. So with this we have completed all the 6 different drivers which definitely can be used to measure the supply chain performance. Okay, so with this we will uh, wind up this session here itself, and thank you one and all.